I'm going to share with you today everything that's in the lease that I currently use for my rental properties. I have anywhere between 20 and 30 rentals at any given time, and I've been doing this for more than 20 years now. I self-manage the properties that I own. This is the Rich on Money podcast, episode 4. I'm finally getting somewhere. My name is Rich Carey. I'm a real estate investor, property manager, realtor, all-around good guy. I want to share my entire lease with you today. I'm just going to read through it and talk about the important things that are in there. By the way, I'm not a lawyer, but I have played one on TV. I was pretty damn good at it. These are lessons that I've learned over years and years of having tenants and tweaking and realizing what's wrong with the lease. Here's a big caveat to this. It's not my intention to sell you my lease. I don't think that's a great idea. The best way to have a lease that works well for you is to find your own eviction attorney in your state, get that person to help you find a good lease, and consult with them on all lease-related issues while you have rental properties. My lease isn't going to work for the lawyer that you use, especially if you're not in my city or state. Let's dive into this. I'm in Montgomery, Alabama, and I've got my lease right here. I think it's on about 4 pages of text and then signatures. I use electronic leases from Tenant Cloud, and I love this. And my lease is a combination of what Tenant Cloud came with a bunch of my adjustments. What's important on a lease? What do you got to watch for? How do you look at a lease? First of all, if you're going to evict somebody, you need to have the correct information at the beginning of the lease. If there's some kind of mistake, like name wrong, address wrong, you're going to be in big trouble. Dates wrong. Their name's got to be correct. The tenants. Any adult 18 or over should be on the lease. Don't allow any exceptions for this. The more people you've got in a lease, the more people you can go after when they skip town on you. The address has to be correct on here. Don't be like a number off or spell the street name wrong or have the wrong zip code. That's just a way that a judge can throw something out on you. And then the beginning and end dates. Make sure you don't mess up the year. So it's only 1 month instead of a year and 1 month. Mine says in the first paragraph here, at the end of the lease term, if no new lease is signed, the lease converts to a month-to-month tenancy. In other words, mine automatically changes to a month-to-month if nobody signs a new lease. I think that's fine. Sometimes people write theirs up so that if nobody signs anything, it auto-renews for another year. I'm not a huge fan of this, but it is sort of a way to lock people in again. But I'm not a big fan. All right, now the rent amount is on here. What the rent is, payable in advance, on or before the first day of every month. Rent is payable to Richard Carey. Failure to pay rent is a violation of the rental agreement. That's kind of obvious. Now I have on the lease when the rent is actually late. And what I mean by late is when you can charge a late fee. I mean, it's late the day after it's due, but you can charge a late fee only when you specify. And that has to be in line with what the law says in your state and city. Some may not let you charge a late fee on the second day. I give a 3-day grace period in here and I charge a late fee on the 4th. And that's all very clear in the lease. The late fee's in here. Tenant shall be charged a late fee of $140. For me, it's 10% of what the lease is. Some states may have a cap, maybe only $50 late fee. Right? Some states do not allow a daily late fee. I'm not a fan of a daily late fee either. That can get out of hand. I think it's hard to enforce. I haven't really tried to enforce it. I haven't really messed around with it. I have some stuff in my lease that I put in bold. It isn't necessarily a legal issue. It's more to call their attention to things that I care about and I want them to remember. I'm going to read this to you. This is in bold. Poor health, reduced hours at work, loss of job, financial or family emergency, or other circumstances will not excuse any late payments. People always say, you can't charge me a late payment because such and such happened. And I guess I'm saying that doesn't really matter. If it's late, it's late. Now, you're allowed to make an exception if you want to. Immediate family member dies. Someone, their child's in the hospital, obvious things. But I get a lot of things come up uncle's funeral, right? It's Christmas. I need to buy presents for my kids. Kind of random. You got to make the obvious judgment call. Most issues don't deserve, most things I can think of, you shouldn't give a break on a late payment, but follow your heart on this. Because I have electronic leases, I have some wording in here that supposedly makes that legal and enforceable. Rent will be paid online through the Tenant Cloud website. Landlord will not come to the property for the purpose of picking up payment. Rent cannot be paid in cash. Oh, I don't want people to pay rent in cash. You got to check with a lawyer if you're allowed to say this or not. It's a safety issue. People get jumped when they pick up cash sometimes. Security deposit's in here. Saying what the security deposit is. It says in here that the security deposit can go towards owed rent and damages. It also talks about being able to use it to pay reasonable attorney fees. Then I address the holding deposit. When somebody gives you when somebody gives you a deposit up front with the promise that they're going to move in a month or a month and a half. If they're a no-show, it says right in here, the tenant forfeits any holding deposit if they're unable to move in as agreed upon. There's an occupant section. It lists who the occupants are, and it says the maximum number of occupants possible. I tend to max it out at two people per room in the property. I talk about utilities in here. Mainly, if it's a situation where I'm paying a certain utility, I'm going to spell it out. Maybe I'm paying the water bill. For some reason in my multifamilies. Otherwise, it says something like, tenant agrees to pay for utilities and services. Pets. It says in here that pets aren't allowed unless there's a separate pet addendum allowing it, talking about the size, name, type, all that stuff. I try not to have pets, but if they have pets, I charge a decent amount. It discourages it, but if they really care about them, they'll pay. Look, some of you are going to be like, this is awesome stuff. Rich, can you send me your lease? I just want to use your lease. I don't want you to use my lease. I told you need to find your own lease by working with your own eviction attorney that you'll use when things maybe go bad. That's going to advise you when you have issues with your tenants. If you still want mine, I'm going to charge you $50 for it. I'm not trying to make money from this. I don't think you should buy it, but I'll send it to you if you want me to. I just know a lot of people are going to ask, and no, it's not free. Liability and renter's insurance. Oh, this is a good one. I like to make renter's insurance mandatory because here's the situation. What if the property burns down? First of all, if the tenant ends up being liable for that, they could be sued for, causing the fire by me or by the bank or, by someone that got injured. That renter's insurance will cover that. Also, the renter's like, hey, what about my furniture? Well, the landlord's insurance does not cover the renter's furniture. You got to have your own insurance. So I put this in the lease. It says that they have to get it, and it says that they have to list me, the landlord, as an additional insured. And it gives the amount. I think it's $300,000 liability for me, but it gives the minimum amount to have. Now, why do I think this is important? Well, let's just say that over my 20-something years, I've seen 3 different fires. And in all 3 cases, out of those 3 fires, I've seen the situations where they had it and didn't have it. And boy, did they regret it if they didn't have it. I just put in the lease. I think the landlord's insurance company, they're happy if you put that in your lease. Sometimes they'll ask if it's in your lease. I have something in here about what I'm going to maintain as a landlord. It says I've agreed to maintain in safe working condition roof, electrical, gas, plumbing, HVAC, stove, and oven. So I don't do washer and dryer, that's for sure. I let them buy that, I let them maintain that. Things I say about tenant obligations. They're going to keep the premises safe and clean. They're going to keep it mowed, watered, free of fire ants, keep the roof and gutters free of debris, shrubs neatly trimmed, landscaping maintained. Just basic stuff. It says that they'll report any items that require repair to the landlord within 5 days of moving in. You should still ask anyway separately. It says in here that if they go and fix something, they can't just deduct it from their rent. They need to ask you to fix it. You'll fix it and pay for it with your funds. If they run and fix something, they can't just subtract it from rent. Sometimes people try that. I put certain things in bold because I just want them to think about it. Do not use space heaters in the home. I've had this cause a fire before. Don't use an oven as a form of heat. I've seen people do this. Do not affix structures to the premises, including antennas, satellite dishes, signs, without prior written consent. Do not store boats, RVs, waterbeds, equipment, hazardous material, paints, fuels, chemicals, waste, non-operating vehicles parked on the lawn. I had this thing about plumbing. It says that tenants are going to have to fix plumbing that gets caused from their misuse. Basically, if you send a plumber out there and somebody shoved a toy into the toilet, that's why it flooded, then I'm going to bill them for whatever came out of that. If you put something crazy in the garbage disposal, like pistachio shells, I don't make this stuff up. Tenant agrees not to place into any drain lines non-approved substances such as cooking grease, sanitary napkins, diapers, children's toys. I've seen all of these, every single one. Baby wipes that don't dissolve. A no smoking thing in here, a pest control thing. It basically says, make sure there's no pests when you move in, because after 30 days, if pests show up, it's probably because you're messy and it's your problem. And that's true. There's a mold thing in here. If any small amount of mold pops up, let us know. We'll get it fixed. Peaceful enjoyment. Basically, These are the hours that you can't be noisy. If neighbors can hear you, you're wrong. And, if neighbors or, whatever, people living upstairs, downstairs, it's a peaceful enjoyment clause. It's important because if they're noisy, you could end the lease if they keep breaking this, if they're a pain in the ass and you just need to get them out. Keys and lockouts. I really like this one. So if you have a decent amount of rentals, here's what's going to happen to you a lot. Because people that live in apartment complex, they're pretty used to like losing their keys, not finding their keys, and just like calling the front desk and be like, can you come let me in? I don't want to do that. I get called to do that too many times on weekends, late at night, holidays. My lease says that I don't service lockouts. I'm not going to show up with a key and let you in. If you want to do that, you can, but I'd charge at least $60, if not $100. I wouldn't do it for $200. So I just tell them you got to call a locksmith. And when they call me, I refer them to the lease and I send them the numbers of a few locksmiths. And you're going to need to make sure you find something that's 24 hours a day. Now, I have had tenants break windows and kick doors down because they couldn't get in and they didn't want to pay. And you kind of have to deal with that. But I'm not servicing these lockouts. Pain in the ass. Also, I tell them, don't kick the door down, don't break the window. You got to pay for it if you do. Subleasing. There's something in here that says you can't sublease it. So they can't rent it from you and then go on a vacation and Airbnb it or let a friend live there. They can't sublease it. Don't let them. Return checks. I do everything electronically. So I have wording in here that says if the electronic means bounces or doesn't go through, then you can charge a fee for that. Mine's $30. Hardly ever happens. As long as they just come back and pay again right away. There's a trash thing in here. It hasn't really come up, but it's like, if they leave trash on the lawn and you got to pay someone, then you can charge them. There's a military clause in here. I think it's supposed to be in here. It's like if you're in the military and you get called away, you got to show a lease. It's actually for the military members' benefit. Sometimes military members may try to abuse this, and so they don't go through the proper channels, but they're supposed to have they're supposed to have orders that say they're leaving, and you're supposed to let them go without penalty. I don't see a problem with that. Of course, I was in the military. There's a lead-based paint disclosure in here, lead-based paint. Landlord's address for communications. There's just a spot in here that's like, this is my name, this is the address, this is the phone number, like address for like mailing checks. I don't have any checks mailed to me. Some people are going to want to do that. I really try to avoid that. I love everything to be online and automated. All the accounting's automated. I'm not like getting on my phone, taking pictures of checks, mailing stuff, going to the bank, putting stuff in the teller window. I'm not going to do any of that crap. That's a waste of my time. I have this electronic means section. I won't read the whole thing, but it's like the lawyer put this in because I said I do so many things electronically. I want to make sure it's legal, like applications, leases, online payments, stuff like that. Parties agree that this agreement may be communicated by use of secure electronic means, including but not limited to electronic mail, internet, electronic signatures, initials. It just kind of has stuff like that in there. Your tenant agrees that you're allowed to put up for rent or for sale signs and they need to help you out and give you reasonable access to the property. That stuff needs to be in there. This one's really important. This has saved my butt before when I had bad tenants that I needed to get out and I wasn't sure how. I've seen this save somebody's butt when they had somebody in like a 4 or a 5-year lease and they regretted it and they wanted to get them out. There's a way to do that by having this in here. Here are the reasons you can terminate the lease, right? If rent is not paid within 7 days after the due date. So if it's late enough and you don't like these people because they've been a pain in the ass, just terminate the lease. Then they got to leave. You have another legal reason to make them leave. Sometimes terminating the lease and getting them to leave is legally easier than evicting them for non-payment. Or you can do both of these things at the same time. Another thing I put in here is fails to cure any default in the performance of any covenant. So like they have a pit bull in the house, they have an unauthorized pet. They're being too noisy. The police are always showing up, for just domestic disputes or something. Oh, it's all happened. Trust me, it's all happened. If they petition for bankruptcy, you can kill the lease. If it's deserted for a period of 15 consecutive days or longer. I like all this stuff, but check with your lawyer. I am not a lawyer, but I have played one on TV. Again, some of you are going to be like, oh, that's really cool stuff, Rich. Send me a copy of your lease. Can I get a copy of that thing? The answer is, yes, you can, but I'll charge you $50. That being said, I'm not trying to make money from this. I don't think you should pay for it because I don't think you should use it without consulting with a lawyer first. And he might want to give you a different one. And things are going to be different in other states. This would be somewhat useful in Montgomery, Alabama. Not sure about anywhere else. Anything I miss big on leases, leave that down in the comments. What do you think? This is the Rich on Money podcast, and this is Rich on Money. Signing off.